The silence inside the conference room was deafening. Rain still tapped against the tall windows of the Sapphire Hill mansion, casting streaks of light across the polished oak table. 12 security guards stood rigid, uniforms damp, boots muddy from the walk up the circular driveway. At the head of the table sat a man in a tailored navy suit, every crease sharp, every movement deliberate. His presence commanded the room, not through volume, but through gravity. That man was Malik Johnson. Just 2 hours earlier, those same guards had refused him entry to his own home. And now they stood awaiting judgment from the very man they dismissed. "Before we begin," Malik said, his voice calm but cutting, "let me introduce myself again, since it seems that wasn't clear the first time." He stood slowly, sliding a sleek company badge across the table. The gold lettering gleamed under the overhead lights. Malik Johnson, Chief Executive Officer, Johnson Global Holdings. "I own this residence," he continued, pacing slowly around the table. "And as of last week, I own Guardian Core Security, your employer." A ripple of shock passed through the room. Knees stiffened. Breathing hitched. Malik stopped in front of Raymond Shaw, the senior guard who had blocked his car in the rain, and ordered him to take the delivery entrance. "You assumed I didn't belong because of the car I drove, or the color of my skin." "Maybe both," Malik said, eyes locked on Raymond's. "You didn't ask for proof. You didn't check records. You made a judgment. And that judgment told me everything I need to know." He turned toward the rest of the room. "You don't just guard gates. You decide who gets to feel welcome, and who doesn't. That ends today." Some shifted uncomfortably. Others stared at the floor. Malik took a breath, collected and deliberate. "This is not just a disciplinary meeting. This is the beginning of a systemic reckoning." He returned to his seat, folded his hands, and looked every man and woman in the eye. "Let's talk about what happened tonight." 18 hours. That's how long Malik Johnson had been in transit. From a tense executive summit in London to a layover in New York, and finally to Atlanta, he was running on black coffee, pure grit, and the promise of peace. Or at least what was supposed to be. As his private car cruised along the tree-lined roads of northern Fulton County, Malik leaned his head back against the seat, loosening the top button of his shirt. The Atlanta skyline had faded behind him. Now, winding roads and lush estates surrounded him, each more grand than the last. He checked the dashboard clock. 7:16 p.m. Just a few more minutes. He glanced down at the embossed welcome packet resting on his lap, his name etched across the top. Malik Johnson, new resident, Sapphire Hill Estate. The purchase had closed 3 months ago while he was overseeing an expansion project in Europe. A 7,200 square foot modern colonial, 3 fireplaces, 6 bedrooms, 4-car garage. Gated, private, prestigious. It wasn't just a house. It was the reward for 2 decades of grinding. It was everything he'd earned. Everything they said he'd never have. He imagined the smell of polished wood floors, the warmth of a brand new home, his mother's picture finally displayed on a mantel worthy of her memory. He hadn't grown up with chandeliers or concierge gates. He grew up watching his mom work 2 jobs to keep the lights on and food on the table. But now he'd built something lasting. Something undeniable. The car slowed as the entrance gate came into view. A stone archway bearing the name Sapphire Hill, elegantly lit, flanked by 2 uniformed guards standing beside a glass security booth. Behind them, a winding private road led to some of Georgia's most expensive real estate. Malik sat up straighter, adjusting his tie, wiping the fatigue from his face. Tonight, he'd finally sleep in his own home. The driver lowered the window. Malik nodded politely at the guards, ready to show his ID and start this new chapter. The sky was heavy with clouds, and a light drizzle had begun, dusting the windshield in a fine mist. But even before the car came to a full stop, Malik saw something in one guard's face. Tight-lipped, arms folded, head tilted slightly. Not curiosity. Not professionalism. Something colder. Malik's fingers tightened around the welcome packet. He didn't know it yet, but that moment, the space between arrival and recognition, was about to change everything. The BMW came to a smooth stop just before the gate. The rain had thickened, now tapping insistently against the windshield. Malik rolled down the passenger window as the driver leaned back, giving him room to speak directly to the guards. The older of the 2, tall, stocky, with a graying mustache and a weathered face, stepped forward. His name tag read, Shaw. "Evening." Malik offered with a cordial nod. I'm Malik Johnson. I just closed on 814 Brookstone Drive. Shaw didn't respond immediately. He looked Malik over, not just the ID being held out, but the man himself. The skin tone, the voice, the presence. You here to deliver something? Shaw finally asked, his tone flat, unreadable. Malik blinked, then smiled patiently. No. I'm the homeowner. Shaw's eyes narrowed. 814, huh? That's the big house up near the ridge. Dr. Simmons used to own it. Correct. I purchased it in July. Shaw still hadn't looked at the ID. Got some thefts in the area, he said instead. Package runners, folks claiming to be Uber Eats, showing up at gates they don't belong to. Malik kept his voice measured. I understand. That's why I'm showing you this. He extended his driver's license and a printed copy of the deed transfer. Finally, Shaw took the documents, glanced at them for less than 2 seconds, handed them back without a word. Malik tilted his head slightly. Would you like to verify them? We don't have anyone by your name listed in the resident system, Shaw said coolly. I just got back into the country. The HOA might not have updated your files, but... Shaw raised a hand. I'm gonna have to ask you to use the service entrance around back. Deliveries, visitors, contractors all go that way. Malik sat back, stunned. I'm not a delivery driver, he said evenly. I'm the property owner. Before Shaw could answer, headlights glowed behind them. A white SUV pulled up. Shaw stepped aside and waved them through without hesitation. No ID check. No name asked. Just a smile and a nod. The gate opened. Malik turned back, rain now dripping from his sleeves. You didn't check their credentials. Been here 10 years, Shaw shrugged. We know who belongs. The gate closed behind the SUV. Malik said nothing. Just stared at the man, the booth, the soaked pavement. And something inside him, quiet and calm, began to burn. Malik didn't yell. He didn't argue, curse, or demand to speak to a supervisor. He didn't raise his voice or plead his case. He simply rolled the window back up. Slow, controlled. The raindrops thudded harder against the windshield as he sat back in the leather seat, chest rising and falling, eyes locked on the reflection of the gate in the glass. Inside, a storm was building, but not one you could hear. Drive forward, he said quietly to the driver. We're not going through here tonight. The driver hesitated. Sir, we'll park up the street. The car eased away from the gate, turning around slowly and heading toward a public curb about 300 yards from the Sapphire Hill entrance. Malik's mind wasn't racing, it was sharpening. He replayed the entire interaction in crisp mental snapshots. Shaw's posture, his dismissive glance, the way his fingers barely grazed the paperwork, the casual wave to the white SUV, the phrase, "We know who belongs." It wasn't the first time Malik had encountered it, but it never stopped cutting deep. And tonight, it cut cleaner than ever, because it happened at his own front door. He took out his phone, battery flashing red at just 3%. He opened the Notes app and started typing. Every word spoken, every gesture, every missed protocol. He even noted the time on the gate surveillance camera as it blinked above the booth, 7:22 p.m. Then 7:24. He noted how long the SUV sat at the gate. How Shaw greeted them with a smile. How he looked at Malik with suspicion, then told him to try around back. He took a picture of the gate, the booth, the guard badge. Every detail mattered. Because Malik knew something most people didn't. He knew the power of documentation. He knew what receipts could do when used with precision. When directed at the right people. At the right time. Malik stared at his phone, now at 2%. Not enough juice to make a call, but enough to send one text. To Charlene, his executive assistant. Need protocol oversight activated at Sapphire Hill. Prepare HR and legal. Now. He hit send just before the screen went dark. Then leaned back. Not in defeat, but in planning. Malik sat in the parked car as the rain carved rivers down the side windows. Streetlights flickered through the storm, casting uneven shadows across his face. He was no longer a guest denied entry. He was a strategist preparing for a controlled takedown. He reached into the glove compartment and pulled out a portable charger, his failsafe for nights like this. As the phone powered back on, a dull buzz signaled 3 missed messages from Charlene. Malik called immediately. "Mr. Johnson?" Charlene's voice came through, clear and sharp despite the late hour. She was always alert, always ready. "I need you to initiate contingency protocol," Malik said. Her tone shifted instantly. "Understood. What's the situation?" "Denied entry at my own gate. I presented ID. I gave documentation. Didn't matter." There was a pause. "Racial?" she asked. "Subtle enough to feel plausible. Obvious enough to be systemic." Another pause. "I'll alert legal and HR," she replied. "Do you want physical presence at the site?" "Yes. Send Ethan and Ms. Lopez. Full compliance authority. I want footage pulled, personnel IDs, security firm documentation, everything. Tell them they have 90 minutes to be on site and briefed. I'll arrange transport now. Also," Malik paused, his voice dropping to something deeper, more deliberate. "Remind me, who holds Guardian Core security under our recent acquisitions?" There was no delay. Johnson Global Holdings took controlling interest in May. They were acquired through the Turner Ventures bundle. Malik exhaled slowly. "That means Shaw, and everyone under that badge, technically reports to me." "Yes, sir. Send their regional operations file to my tablet. Include their personnel complaint history, performance reviews, and supervisory chains." "Already pulling it," she confirmed. Before hanging up, she added, "Would you like me to alert the PR team?" "Not yet," Malik replied. "Let's solve it, not spin it." He ended the call. Outside the windshield, another vehicle approached the gate. A silver Lexus. 2 white passengers inside. Shaw stepped out from the booth, smiling again, waving them through with the ease of routine. Malik didn't look away. He watched every movement like a chess master watching an amateur repeat the same flawed opening, again and again. The board was set now, and Plan B already in motion. 37 minutes after the call ended, a sleek black SUV glided to a stop outside the Sapphire Hill gate. Inside were 2 people who never arrived anywhere without purpose. Ethan Price, Director of Human Resources for Johnson Global Holdings, stepped out first, broad-shouldered, clean-cut, with a calm demeanor that hid a sharp mind and zero tolerance for corporate liability. Beside him stood Ms. Elena Lopez, Senior Counsel. Small in stature, but with the energy of a charging storm. Her briefcase swung low and heavy at her side, filled with documents, directives, and enough authority to shut down a regional office with a signature. Rain had slowed to a mist, but the air still carried tension like static before lightning. Raymond Shaw exited the security booth with a clipboard in hand, oblivious to who was now standing just outside his jurisdiction. "Evening," he greeted, squinting at Ethan and Elena. "This is a private community. Can I help you?" Ethan extended a leather wallet, flipping it open with practiced precision. "Ethan Price. Johnson Global Holdings. This is Ms. Lopez from our legal division." Shaw frowned. "You with the moving company or something?" Elena stepped forward. "We're here on behalf of the owner of 814 Brookstone Drive. There's been an incident involving your team." Shaw looked confused. "That property's owned by some guy who is my client," she interrupted smoothly. "And also your employer." That landed like thunder. Shaw blinked. "Wait, what? You work for Guardian Core Security, correct?" Ethan asked. Shaw nodded slowly. "Well, as of last quarter, Guardian Core is a wholly owned subsidiary of Johnson Global, which makes Mr. Malik Johnson your CEO." Silence. Then a nervous laugh. "You're saying the guy we—" Elena cut in, her voice steady and firm. "We're not here for discussion. We need to speak with whoever's in charge of this post. Immediately." Shaw gestured behind him. That would be me. Then you provide us access to the security logs, camera feeds, and all entry records from the last 3 hours. Now." Ethan stepped closer, lowering his voice. "And I'd suggest full cooperation. Because this doesn't just look bad. It is bad." As the gate slowly creaked open, Shaw stood there frozen, suddenly aware the night had taken a sharp turn, and he was no longer in control. Inside the SUV, Ms. Lopez reached for her notepad. The documentation had begun. Inside the security booth, fluorescent lights hummed above ceiling tiles that hadn't been dusted in months. The air was thick with heat and awkward silence. Elena Lopez set her briefcase on the main console and opened it with a satisfying click. Ethan remained standing, arms crossed, surveying every inch of the cramped space like it was a deposition room. Shaw hovered nearby, nervous fingers tapping against his clipboard. "Who's responsible for monitoring surveillance?" Elena asked, already knowing the answer. A younger guard, maybe mid-20s, raised his hand from the corner. His name tag read, "Carter. Deshaun Carter," he said quietly. "I'm on tech rotation tonight." Ethan nodded. "Mr. Carter, please pull up gate footage from 6:30 p.m. to now. Both video and audio, if available." Carter hesitated, casting a glance at Shaw, who gave him a silent shake of the head. Small, quick, but unmistakable. But Deshaun didn't look away this time. He turned back to the monitor and clicked into the system. With a few keystrokes, a grainy playback began rolling across the screen. There it was, Malik's car approaching. The rain already falling. Shaw's stance stiff, arms folded across his chest like a judge on a bench. The sound came through next. Every word, every dismissive tone. "You here to deliver something? Use the service entrance. We know who belongs." Elena didn't blink. Ethan stood still. The room grew colder. The screen then showed the white Lexus arriving minutes later. No ID check. No hesitation. Just a wave, a grin, and the gate swinging open. "Can you pause there?" Elena said, pointing to the moment. Carter froze the frame. Now zoom on Shaw's face. The image sharpened. There was no denying the friendliness in his expression, so different from the gatekeeper who had stood like a wall just minutes before. Ethan turned to Shaw. "Did you document any of these interactions?" Shaw swallowed. "I didn't think I had to. I mean, they're regulars." "But Malik Johnson isn't?" Elena asked calmly. Silence. Carter cleared his throat, then spoke softly. "For the record, Mr. Johnson is listed in our system. His profile was uploaded last week." Shaw's head snapped toward him. "You checked that without permission," he barked. "I checked it because you didn't," Carter replied. "I thought he deserved the same respect as anyone else." Elena looked at Ethan, then back at Carter. A single line scribbled onto her notepad. "Integrity noted." The screen went black. Elena closed her laptop with a soft snap, signaling the end of the review. The evidence had spoken. There was no debating tone. No denying bias. No defending oversight. Ethan glanced at his watch. 9:14 p.m. Right on schedule. The front door to the Sapphire Hill main house opened quietly, and Malik Johnson stepped into the room. Fresh suit. Dry shoes. Calm expression. But his presence carried weight now. No longer just a homeowner seeking entry. He was the architect of what came next. "Good evening," he said, walking past the startled guards, nodding once at Carter. "Thank you for your professionalism." Carter stood, unsure how to respond. The others stayed silent. Malik approached the center of the room, unhurried, and pulled a slim tablet from his briefcase. He tapped the screen twice before projecting it wirelessly to the wall-mounted monitor behind the booth desk. On screen appeared a corporate organizational chart. At the top, Johnson Global Holdings. Just beneath it, Guardian Core Security, Division 7 Southeast. Under that, Sapphire Hill Gate Team. Malik turned to Shaw. "I understand you've been working security here for over 8 years," he began. Shaw straightened, trying to regain composure. "Yes, sir. That's correct. You take pride in your work?" "Absolutely." Malik's gaze didn't waver. "Then I imagine you'd know the name of your company's ownership." Shaw blinked. I guess I never looked into it." "Maybe you should have," Malik replied, calm and measured. "Because as of last quarter, Guardian Core became a subsidiary of my firm." He paused, letting the silence stretch just long enough. "That means you don't just work security. You work for me." Shock settled like fog across the room. "You refused me entry to my own home. ignored protocol, dismissed my documentation. But most telling of all, you waved through people who looked like they belonged, while treating me like an intruder. Shaw opened his mouth, but no words came. This isn't just about me, Malik continued. It's about culture. It's about what your gut reaction says about who gets treated with dignity and who doesn't. He turned to the younger guard. Mr. Carter, thank you for checking the system, for thinking independently. That took guts. Carter nodded slowly, still stunned. Malik looked back to Shaw and the others. You thought tonight was routine, but for me, this was a case study. And you just showed me everything I needed to know. The conference room inside the mansion was colder than anyone expected, not in temperature, but in atmosphere. The guards stood in two uneven rows, their uniforms still damp, faces tense, eyes darting from one another, unsure where this was going. At the head of the table, Malik remained seated. Ethan and Elena flanked him, silent but observant. Malik set his tablet down with a soft click, then looked up. Let's be clear, he began. This isn't about punishment. This is about accountability. No one spoke. You made a choice tonight. Not just to question me, which is your job, but to bypass protocol, ignore standard verification, and apply personal judgment in place of policy. His eyes settled on Shaw. You made that judgment based on appearance. Not behavior. Not documentation. Just a feeling. Shaw's throat bobbed. Sir, I didn't mean. I'm not interested in what you meant, Malik interrupted, his voice even. I'm focused on what you did. And what you did exposed a problem that runs deeper than any gate or checkpoint. He stood slowly and walked to the front of the room, taking his time. The quiet made every step louder. You see, authority doesn't make you a protector. Judgment doesn't make you wise. And familiarity doesn't excuse laziness. He stopped in front of the team, holding their gaze. I'm terminating your employment, effective immediately, he said, his voice unwavering. Shaw's shoulders sagged. A younger guard to his right looked down at his boots. Another let out a quiet sigh. But I'm not here to humiliate you, Malik added. I'm not here to make this a spectacle. I've been where you are. I've made mistakes, too. The difference is, I was given a chance to learn from them. He turned to Carter. This young man made the choice to do what was right, even when it wasn't easy. He didn't do it to impress anyone. He did it because it was fair. Malik faced the group again. Some of you may be eligible for reassignment. Others may not. But moving forward, Guardian Corps will undergo mandatory retraining across every post we operate. Then, quietly, not because of me, but because the next Malik Johnson who pulls up to a gate might not have the means to prove he belongs. He looked them over one last time. You all just helped me make sure that won't happen again. Monday morning arrived without fanfare, but inside the Johnson Global Holdings boardroom, the tone was anything but ordinary. Executives, department heads, and regional directors filled every chair around the glass conference table, while others stood along the back wall. Screens lit up around the room with charts, statistics, and security audit data. At the center of it all stood Malik Johnson, not with anger, but with direction. Let me be clear, he began, hands resting on the table. This isn't about one gate guard. Or one night. It's about a system that allowed bias to go unchecked, and worse, to be justified. He tapped his tablet. A slide projected across the monitors. Selective Protocol Application. Internal Report. Guardian Corps Security. The data was sobering. Nearly 67% of internal incident reports involving resident disputes had some element of racial or cultural misunderstanding. Of those, over 80% were resolved informally. Meaning no investigation, no documentation, no accountability. Ladies and gentlemen, Malik continued, this is what cultural rot looks like in a uniform. There was a long pause. I don't care how small a division is. If it's under our name, it reflects us. Heads nodded. He pointed to the next slide. Phase 1, Culture Audit and Equity Realignment. Effective immediately, Malik was launching a full-scale audit of every company Johnson Global owned with frontline personnel, security, customer service, leasing offices, maintenance divisions. Elena Lopez stepped forward to present the legal foundation of the policy. Ethan followed with a framework for mandatory retraining, sensitivity workshops, and updated verification standards that remove subjectivity from standard interactions. This isn't just about catching bad actors, Malik said. It's about rewriting how power is distributed at the entry points, literally and metaphorically. He paused. It's easy to assume that discrimination happens in backrooms or boardrooms. But more often, it happens in thresholds, between the sidewalk and the welcome mat. He let the words sink in. We're not fixing PR. We're fixing principle. A murmur of agreement moved through the room. And let me be absolutely clear, Malik added. This isn't just a moral initiative. It's a leadership one. Companies that protect dignity outperform those that protect appearances. With that, he tapped the final slide. New mission statement. Every door should open with fairness. And for the first time in that room, silence didn't mean hesitation. It meant clarity. 6 months later, the marble lobby of the Sapphire Hill Community Center had been transformed into the nerve center of a movement. Uniformed officers, property managers, HOA presidents, and corporate security executives filled every seat in the auditorium. Some came out of genuine conviction. Others came because they didn't want to be the next name in a headline. The banners read, "The Secure Together Summit, Redefining Safety Through Fairness." At the front stood a stage flanked by soft lighting, large screens, and a podium bearing the seal of Johnson Global Holdings. But the real attention magnet was Malik Johnson, standing at center stage, suit crisp, voice steady. He didn't open with stats. He opened with his story. I was denied entry to my own home. I had the paperwork. I had the ID. But the thing I didn't have, the thing I wasn't given, was the benefit of the doubt. He let that breathe. A guard made a snap judgment that night. But the system he worked for gave him permission to do it. He clicked the remote, bringing up testimonials on the screen, anonymous, raw, painful. People of color turned away from their friends' neighborhoods. Caregivers questioned outside nursing homes. Service workers followed through gated communities. One slide read simply, "I have to dress like I'm rich just to be treated like I'm real." Murmurs echoed through the room. Malik continued, "We can't talk about community safety while upholding a structure that selectively defines who the community even is." He presented Johnson Global's redesigned verification model, digital resident tags, bias-proof ID scanning, random audits, and the training now being replicated across 21 partner firms. Patricia Harris, now Chief Equity Officer, detailed how her division had seen an 84% decrease in complaints across reformed sites. Then came the pledges. One by one, security companies and property firms signed on to adopt the new model. 12 signed that afternoon. By the end of the week, the number would rise to 37. Ethan announced the creation of an open-source protocol toolkit. Elena committed to building a legal accountability alliance with civil rights organizations. And when Malik returned to the mic, he left the crowd with one sentence. "Security that excludes is not protection, it's projection." That line would appear the next morning in national press. The Secure Together Summit had done more than share a story. It started a standard. 1 year to the day after he was turned away, Malik Johnson stood at the front steps of his Sapphire Hill home, not in a suit this time, but in a navy sweater and rolled-up sleeves. The housewarming celebration had just ended. String lights swayed gently across the patio, the scent of grilled vegetables and champagne still lingering in the air. The lawn was scattered with guests, neighbors, employees, friends, laughing, shaking hands, and swapping stories under the Georgia sky. But Malik had stepped away, needing just a moment to look out across the gate. It stood there, quiet, subtle, redesigned. A new security team manned the booth, diverse, calm, trained under the very system he'd helped create. There were no judgment calls made here. Just procedures. Fair, verifiable procedures that respected both safety and dignity. A few feet away, footsteps approached. Raymond Shaw. His posture wasn't the same. The sharp edges had softened. His eyes held the look of a man who'd had to sit with hard truths and let them settle deep. "Mr. Johnson," he said, voice low, "I didn't come to ask for anything. I just wanted to say thank you." Malik looked at him for a long moment. "You were the first person to make me feel unwelcome at a home I owned," he said plainly. "But maybe you're also the first to really face what that means." Shaw nodded. "I joined a community accountability group. Did training. Listened to stories that sounded way too familiar. Stories that started at gates, and ended in trauma. Malik didn't offer immediate forgiveness, but he offered something more valuable, an invitation. "We're expanding our security reform task force," he said. "If you've truly done the work, maybe you can help others start it." Shaw's face shifted with something close to disbelief, and then relief. Later that evening, Malik spoke briefly to the remaining guests. He didn't quote numbers. He didn't recap board decisions. He simply said this: "The gates we build, literal or not, should be designed to protect, not to divide. They should offer safety, not suspicion. A gate shouldn't ask, 'Who are you?' It should ask, 'How can I let you in without leaving fairness out?'" Applause followed. But what stuck with everyone wasn't the speech. It was the gate itself. Still standing. Still secure. But now, open in all the right ways.